Recently, I had someone ask me, can your citizenship application still be denied if you have no criminal records and you meet all the other requirements as far as physical presence? Your travels outside of the US were not that bad. You weren't outside of the US for too long. You don't have any criminal records. Can your naturalization application still be denied? And the answer to that is yes. If USCIS determines that you do not have good moral character. So let's talk about what is good moral character and how you can show good moral character to avoid having your naturalization application denied. I am U.S. immigration attorney Lilian Chukwurah, and I help my clients get green cards and citizenships for themselves and their families using the U.S. immigration law system. So, what is good moral character? Honestly, there's no one definition for it. USCIS officers can deny an application if they feel that you do not have good moral character. There are factors that goes into the determination of if you have good moral character. And I am going to break down 3 of those factors that people overlook when they are applying for citizenship. So, the first one is criminal records. And let me explain what I mean by this. Remember, I said you may not have a criminal record and may still have this issue. Well, there's a difference between having a criminal record and having a criminal conviction, right? If you do not have a conviction for immigration purposes, that does not mean that you automatically have good moral character, just because there's no conviction for immigration purposes. So for example, if you receive probation and your probation is not over yet, the officer cannot determine if you have good moral character or not. So even if the probation says, oh, you didn't admit to this crime, everything, it's not a conviction. Once you are done with your probation, the officer can still not find that you have good moral character because they don't know if you are going to violate the terms of your probation. And don't look at me like that. You know that people violate their probation all the time. So there's no way for the officer to know if you are going to finish your probation successfully. So they are not able to truly make a determination of if you have good moral character based on your criminal history. Okay, they just know you have a probation open. They don't know if you're going to finish it. They don't know if you're going to end up, violating it and end up in jail. They don't know that. So because they can't tell, they're not just going to take your word for it that you're going to, follow through with your probation. They can't find that you have good moral character. So make sure that before you file for naturalization, that your probation is over. Okay, and this is a mistake I see people make all the time where the officer just isn't able to tell. Okay, if your probation is over, you need to make sure, 1, that the crime does not make you inadmissible, 2, that the crime does not make you deportable, and 3, that you include proof that your probation is over. Easiest way to get that proof is by getting it from the probation department. Right? Wherever you did your probation, you had to check in with somebody. You can reach out to your probation officer and get a letter or something from their department that shows that you have successfully completed your probation. Okay? This is super important and people overlook this all the time. Okay? This can put a whole pause on your application. Now, here's the thing. If your probation is ending a year from the time you have your interview, the officer will be forced to deny your application because typically when they send you a notice for more evidence, they can only really give you like 30 days to respond to that. And if your probation is ending a year from that, there's no way that you will be able to respond in time with proof that you've completed your probation. So to save yourself the time and the money and the headache, go ahead and wait, okay? You don't want to be applying for naturalization with an open probation case. And make sure that you are talking to an immigration lawyer before you file. Anytime you have a criminal record, even if you think it's not a deportable offense, even if you think it's not an inadmissibility offense, you want to make sure you're speaking with an immigration lawyer to just confirm what you think. Okay? The second thing that can make someone not have good moral character and that everyone overlooks, mind you, it's a question. It is a question on the naturalization application is, do you owe taxes to the IRS? Have you been filing your taxes with the IRS? People get this wrong all the time. People get this part wrong all the time. Listen, if you owe taxes to the IRS and you are not making payments towards it, if you do not have a formal payment plan with the IRS to pay off that tax liability, please do yourself a favor. Don't apply for naturalization unless you know you're going to have that done before you have your interview. And with the way things are going right now, some people are getting their interviews within months, and some people are getting their interviews like a year later. So you don't know where you're going to fall in that. So you want to make sure that you are giving yourself the space to get done what you need to do. So make sure you have your payment plan in place or that you have it paid off, okay, at least before your interview. But again, if you know you owe, you need to make plans towards paying. USCIS can still find that you have good moral character even if you owe, but are making plans to pay it, right? You already have a payment plan with the IRS and you have proof that you've been making consistent payments based on the agreement with the payment plan. That's what they want to see. So as much as people want to say, oh, well, if you owe taxes, you can't apply, that's not true. You can still apply. You can still show that you have good moral character by showing that you are making payments to the IRS based on your payment plan agreement. Okay? Your payment plan agreement is what solves that good moral character problem. Because by showing that you are making payments, you entered into a payment plan, that means you're taking responsibility for the amount you owe and that you are following through with that agreement, showing that you have good moral character. But if you have a liability and you are not doing anything about it, guess what? It's going to be hard for the officer to be like, oh, this person has a good moral character, even though they owe taxes and they're not doing anything about it. So make sure you are applying for a payment plan if you are not able to pay off the liability all at once. And definitely make sure that you are filing your taxes as a permanent resident, because that is a requirement for you being a permanent resident, is that you work, you file taxes, okay? You file your tax return every single year, that you have a filing requirement, unless you truly do not have a filing requirement. Okay? Don't just skip years just because you feel like it. All right? The third thing that people do not think about, and I've had to have this conversation with several of my clients, is child support. So you have children that are under the age of 18 and they do not live in the same household as you. Guess what? You need to prove that you are supporting those children. So either you have a child support obligation through the court and you can show that you have been meeting those obligations, or you have an informal agreement with the other parent that has physical custody of the kids, that you are making payments or providing some form of financial support for the children, and they are willing to attest to that. Okay, you can show the payments and they're willing to say, yes, we have this agreement and he is supporting the kids or she is supporting the kids. Okay, you need to have that, because people do not think about the fact, okay? People do not think about the fact that child support obligations is important to the government. Because if you are not taking care of your children, who are you expecting to take care of them? Right? How can you tell a USCIS officer that you have good moral character where you are not meeting your responsibilities as a parent? right? So these are logical things. You may be out there like, okay, so I don't pay my child support, or, oh, I missed a few payments. What does it matter? It matters when you're applying for naturalization. Because the officer wants to see that you are taking responsibility for your children and not relying on other people, or God forbid, the government, to take care of those children for you. So if you're applying for naturalization, you have children that are under the age of 18 and they do not live with you, you need to make sure that you have your documentation showing that you are either have a court ordered child support amount and that you are paying that court ordered child support amount. Okay? Or if you do not have a court ordered child support amount to pay, that you have an informal agreement with the other parent and that you have evidence that you have been supporting the child financially. Financially. I want to make that very clear, because sometimes people are like, oh, well, I see my child all the time. That's great. That is beautiful. You are supposed to see your child all the time. But for USCIS, they care about the financials, right? They care about the money. And if you are not showing the money that's going to your child, that's going to your child's parent to take care of your child, you are not going to be seen as having good moral character. And trust me, if you cannot show that you are making those payments, you are not getting your naturalization. You're just not. So to make this as simple as possible, if you have a child that's under 18 that does not live with you, please make sure you're paying child support, either formally through the court or informally directly to the other parent. Make sure you have some form of agreement with that parent if you do not have anything with the court. Okay, and have a way of tracking the payments that you're making to that parent. And I say that because sometimes people are like, oh, I give her like $100 here and there, blah, blah, blah. Great. How can you track that cash? How can you prove that? So I've had clients, I'm like, listen, Cash App, right? Zelle, Venmo, use one of those to track the payments, because guess what? You can print out those transactions. But if you are handing the person cash, the only way you can track that transaction is if the person is giving you a receipt every single time you give them money, or if they're willing to attest that you are giving them that money. So if you do not have a court-ordered child support, make sure that you are keeping track of the payments you're making. Even if you have a child support order through the court, make sure that you are keeping track of the payments, especially if you're making the payments directly to the other parent and not through like a Department of Revenue, for example. So if you're not making the payments directly to the child support department, then you want to have some other form of record of your payments. I typically recommend, in most situations, to make that payment through the child support department, because that way they have all your records. You can literally call them up or go to their office and ask for records of all the payments you have made and a copy of the court order ordering you to pay child support. And they can give that to you. And now you have a record of all your payments. So please, those are the three things that can ruin your good moral character for a naturalization application. So having an open probation that will not be closed before you have your interview, that's a no-no. Owing taxes to the government, not filing taxes to the government, right? Owing taxes and not having some form of payment plan to pay that off, that's a no-no. And that payment plan needs to be with the IRS, not your own internal, oh, I'm going to pay this off in a month. No, you need an actual payment plan with the IRS to overcome that good moral character. And finally, having children that are under 18, not living with you, and you not being able to show that you support them financially, okay? Emotional support is great. Seeing your children is great. But USCIS cares about the financials. So make sure that you have records of the payments that you're making and the things that you're buying for your children, all of those things, because that's what's going to make a difference, all right? If you are interested in filing for naturalization and finally getting your US citizenship, and you want to know whether you qualify, what are the red flags you need to watch out for in your case, please go ahead and schedule a strategy session with me. It is a free 15-minute session where we talk about your case, your situation, and see if you have any of these good moral character issues and help you resolve them before we eventually help you file for your naturalization. You can schedule that free strategy session by going to my website, lilylegal.com, and clicking on Contact Us, where you can select a date and time that works best for you for us to chat about your case.